Hello gamers, welcome back to our channel. We are Isotopos of Wizards and today we will be playing Dress to Impress. Now we are waiting for our players to connect and when we are ready, we are ready to begin. So it seems that we have a new update which includes heat exchangers, shell and tube exchanger and a concentric exchanger and a new update for our centrifugal pump system. So we are ready to play.
To start the game, we have to know the equipment. First, we have Cheto, which is a tube and shell exchanger that has some legs, like a lot of legs. First of all, we have to know the dimensions. The dimensions of Cheto are first the shell length of about 74.5 centimeters, a shell diameter of about 17.6 centimeters, a tube diameter of each 1.27 centimeters, and it has 12 tubes inside of it. Finally, it has a total transfer area of about 1,182.5 centimeters squared. We have also to know Pancha. Pancha is a concentric heat exchanger that is pretty squirmy and is not easy to connect with her at all. And her dimensions are basically a shell length of about 41 centimeters, a shell diameter of about 3.79 centimeters, a tube diameter of about 2.54 centimeters, and finally a total transfer area of about 207.75 centimeters squared.
And now we have our special guest, Griselda. Griselda is a centrifugal pump that is pretty shy sometimes, and she is gonna carry the cold fluid with different combinations. The average flow rate for combining her with Cheto is about 15.22 liters per minute, and the average flow rate for Pancha it's about 18.2 liters per minute. This is because the ACOPs that are needed in order to connect her with the heat exchangers. And now about the properties, we decided that the initial main temperature was about 20.3 and 24.6 in different experiments. And we also need the properties of the density and the mean viscosity that you can see in the table. We have to take into account that this works in duos. The first one is Griselda and Pancha that works in a countercurrent flow. The hot fluid is a water boiler. The initial temperature is 120 Celsius and the hot fluid flow rate, since it's vapor, it's 2 grams per second. These were not synchronized and you can check the inlets and the outlets of the fluids, taking into account the hearts for the image. We also have the other one that is Cheto and Griselda Alliance. This is also countercurrent flow. The hot fluid is the batch reactor heater. The initial temperature is a mean temperature about 43.6 degrees and the hot fluid flow rate is about 6.2 liters per minute. You can also check here the inlets and the outlets of the temperature.
So for Cheto's behavior, first, the inlet temperature of the cold fluid gradually increases over time, and this variation is likely caused because we needed to constantly refill the tank, which introduces colder or warmer water depending on the ambient or supply conditions. Despite these fluctuations, the stabilizes near 30 degrees after a few minutes. The outlet cold temperature is slightly higher in temperature. It is expected in a heat exchanger because it indicates heat absorption from the hot fluid. However, the temperature difference between the inlet and the outlet is not substantial, which suggests either that there is inefficient heat transfer, potentially due to the leaks, or insufficient temperature gradient between the fluids. For the hot fluid, the inlet hot temperature fluctuates slightly for the same reasons as the cold fluid, which is the tank refilling, and stabilizes near 48 degrees. The outlet temperature is consistently lower than the inlet as is expected. However, the drop is not significant as one might expect for a heat transfer. The hot fluid outlet temperature stabilizes around 42 to 43 Celsius, indicating heat loss potentially affected by the leaks.
Let's analyze the performance of Pancha, a single-pass concentric tube heat exchanger, based on the temperature graphs. The inlet temperature of the cold fluid fluctuates between 20 and 27 degrees Celsius due to the manual refilling and water recirculations, which prevent a stable temperature. The outlet temperature increases slightly and stabilizes around 36 to 39 degrees, but the overall temperature difference was small. And for the hot fluid, the inlet temperature remained constant near 100 degrees Celsius, while the outlet temperature gradually dropped to 40 and 65 degrees. Although heat transfer occurred, its efficiency was limited. I think the main problems were inconsistent inlet temperatures of the cold fluid, which reduced the driving force for heat transfer, and significant heat losses to the environment. This results, for example, in a small delta T for both of the fluids and poor overall performance. And finally, to improving in general the efficiency and insulation and stabilizing the cold fluid inlet temperature could significantly improve Pancha efficiency.
Welcome to our simulator. Here it says the welcome to the user, and then it will begin to ask some questions about the dimensions of the exchanger. For example, the units of the length, the units of the diameters, and each diameter internal and external of each tube or shell, and then the material of each of those. Then they have to enter the flow and then the temperatures, the outlet and inlet temperatures of each fluid. So intuitive this tool for the user so they can understand what are they doing. Then the configuration, and finally the type of exchanger and the number of tips for finally getting this answer. It's important to mention that we established some conditionals for the temperatures. Here, the temperature of the cold fluid must be between 0.001 and 99. This for guaranteeing that it stills a liquid, but for the hot fluid, we were more flexible and it could be a liquid or in vapor. This because of the properties of it.
For the calculations, the initial step involved converting values into their respective units to ensure dimensional analysis was properly followed. Thermal conductivities were adjusted to their corresponding values. For the properties, regressions were performed using tabulated data for liquid and vapor phases, selecting the function that best fit the data. Calculations began with the logarithmic mean temperature difference depending on whether the flow configuration was parallel or counterflow. Subsequently, the global heat transfer coefficient was determined, starting with the calculation of the transfer area and the velocities of each fluid. And for the convection coefficients, the process continued with Reynolds numbers and the necessary correlations, as planned.
Additionally, a Reynolds was estimated for each of the flows, and then here were made some conditionals for calculating each length according to the regime and the Prandtl number. Then we were able to estimate the Nusselt number according to this formula, and finally we were able to take the coefficient of transference and then a global coefficient according to this formula, and finally the heat transferred, the real one and the theoretical one. Lately, for the pressure drop, here we had the rugosity and we made some vectors for this. Finally, we estimate one pressure in the inner tube and another in the outer tube, and then we added them for the total pressure drop. For the cost, here are the formulas, and finally there gets to the user the final answer.
Now we have the overall heat transfer coefficient that represents the total ability of the heat exchangers to transfer the heat between two fluids. So we have the theoretical ranges of the heat transfer coefficient. First is the shell and tube heat exchanger, that is a liquid-liquid system between the 500 to the 1500, and the concentric tube heat exchanger, that is a gas-liquid system between the 20 to the 300. We have a little comparative analysis. The shell and tube heat exchanger had a real value of 4.74. This is far below the theoretical range for this type of system, but it can be for different causes. The first one is the low temperature difference. The recirculation of the water during the operation caused that the hot and cold inlet temperatures to be very similar, reducing the thermal driving force and the heat transfer efficiency that depends on a significant temperature gradient, which was not achieved here, as you can see. The second aspect is the constant and significant leakage. A large leak led to heat losses and reduces the fluid volume within the exchanger, significantly decreasing the capacity to transfer heat. This also disrupts the flow patterns, reducing the efficiency of the cross-flow or the counterflow configuration. So we can conclude of this exchanger that the operational issues explain the extremely low U-real, indicating that the exchanger is underperforming and requires adjustment in operation and possibly design. Now we have the concentric tube heat exchanger. The real value of it was 444.20. That exceeds the theoretical range for the gas-liquid system. This can be because the high temperature difference. A boiler operating at 100 Celsius ensures a significant thermal driving force for the heat transfer process, increasing the efficiency. Now we have the efficiency counterflower design. These counterflower arrangements in the concentric tube heat exchanger maximize the thermal gradient along the length of the exchanger, ensuring an efficient heat transfer. Also, we have the optimal conditions for this gas-liquid transfer. This gas turbulence combined with the good thermal properties of the liquid contributes to the high convective heat transfer coefficients, boosting a U-real that the concentric tube heat exchanger is operating under ideal conditions, which explains this higher that explains the performance.
The P&ID diagram for Cheto. So we could see 4 temperature indicators that were the digital thermometers in which we could see the temperature of each fluid. And also it's important to say that the hot water that leaves the heat exchanger was recirculated to the tank with the heater. And also this is the P&ID diagram for Pancha, in which the principal difference is that the hot steam comes from the boiler. So we have a system of valves, safety valves, and also this gate valve that help us to provide this current to the heat exchanger. And also the hot water that leaves the heat exchanger, in this case, can be recirculated. And that's it.